and roll.
Hi, Kim. How are you?
Great, Rose. It's so terrific to see you. How are you today?
Good, thanks.
I love that color on you.
Yeah. Oh, please. I like that on you. That's cool.
Thanks.
Yeah, I know. You look good. Welcome to another episode of Casting Notes from Rose and Kim. There's Kim Swanson. She's a casting director in Los Angeles. I'm Rose Rosen. I'm a casting director in Florida. And thanks for joining us again. We're a million episodes into this crazy pandemic project we did, and here we are.
We thought we'd do like 5 or 6, and here we are close to like 30. It's crazy, isn't it?
I know, but that was kind of like the whole pandemic was that way, wasn't it?
Oh, the understatement of the year. Yes, yes,
We
yes.
thought it'd be 2 weeks in, and here we are.
But hey, so much good has come out of it because we've had so many interesting and fascinating guests that our viewers can learn from.
Yeah.
And I love our guest today. Talk about knowledgeable, right?
Yes. I mean, this is all the knowledge you need in the entertainment industry. We have Mitra Ahouraian, and she is an entertainment attorney in Los Angeles. Mitra, I hope you can join us. Oh my God,
Hi.
there she is. Hi.
Here I am.
I hope I said your last name right. I tried.
You got it. Hard. I know. I saw you trying hard. You got it. I appreciate that.
Well, thanks for joining us, Mitra. It's so great to have you today.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
And you are based also in sunny LA here with me, right?
Yep.
So glad to have you. Gosh, I know that if our guests could chime in and ask questions live, that there would probably be a bazillion questions right now, but we can only talk about so much, right? So I'm just curious, at what point tend to you usually say, yeah, it's time for me to help you?
I think I know we got a little bit shaky with the Wi-Fi there, but I think I got the question. So at what point in someone's career, the question is, at what point in someone's career is it time for an attorney?
Mm-hmm.
Was that the question? Okay.
Yes.
I say the same thing about hiring attorneys I do about, setting up your corporate entity for yourself as a business. And you basically do it when there's enough money at stake. The earlier on that you do it, the better, particularly if you're getting into a management agreement or an agreement with your agent. Those are super, super, super duper important agreements that are going to follow you for years and years. So it's worth it at that stage to fork up the money and get it done right, because I can't tell you the number of times I've seen a bad management agreement that has caused problems down the line when someone wants to break up with their manager and sort of move on. There's issues with, both managers now being entitled to payment and just a lot of complications there. So definitely at that point is a very crucial moment. And in general, same thing, like I said, the same thing as, setting up your corporate entity. It's whenever there is enough money at stake for you to be, concerned. So if you're doing a lot of background work or, very simple jobs that are just, some money here and there, and it's not like you're making 6 figures a year or something like that, then, definitely at that point, it's more cost effective to, not to have an attorney, but there becomes a point where it's really crucial if you want to protect your interests. And with a lot of these contracts, you don't know how long people are going to be using your name and likeness for. There's a lot of things that you don't know to look for, that hopefully, people like you and I and the attorneys that are very passionate about teaching and sharing information can kind of get you to a point where you understand what you're reading and looking at until the time that you can afford an attorney. So
right. I find it so fascinating. I'm curious as to at what point, like so many actors, I think we talked about it before, is that there's a lot of misinformation given out of the difference between a manager versus an agent versus an attorney negotiating or helping you at different stages. I would love for you to talk about that.
Yeah. I mean, first off, there's a legal difference between a manager and an agent. An agent is required to be licensed. They have to put up a bond, they have to go through procedures, and they're also limited in some of the things that they can do. For example, they can only take 10%. Manager can take as much as you're willing to give them. So, but the manager is bound to only take percent. Now, there's another thing that only agents can do under the law, and that is what we call procure employment, which is booking. There are a lot of managers that kind of dip their toe in bookings or finding jobs and things like that. And there's a bit of a kind of lot of actors who don't have managers, who don't have agents yet. Sometimes their managers take on that role, which is a beautiful thing, but it's actually illegal. So in terms of who can book you the job, that's your agent. And if a manager starts booking you and gets reported or someone finds out, then that manager may have to actually give up the money that they've taken from your percentage.
I know you're a Los Angeles attorney. Are you speaking globally that's illegal, or just Los Angeles, or
specifically to California?
Okay.
So this is the Talent Agency Act, and it's specific. Obviously we have laws that have developed as a result of having our, this being our industry, and it's all these things come up so often. So in general, when I speak, it's going to be specific to California and or Los Angeles if we're talking about practices, but it's going to be specific to California because as I'm sure you know, the laws of every state are different. Some are similar, but I want to just be a little bit careful and make sure everyone knows that I'm not, even though there are a lot of similarities, I'm really only speaking to California. So
yes, I think that's important because our viewers are from who knows where.
From everywhere, except if we're talking about copyright law, because that's federal. So anything federal would apply to anyone in the US.
That's cool. And on the same lines, but very different. I know talent have to deal with releases right out of the gate. Is there any kind of information you could give them to start looking for on a release?
Yes. And I want to answer that, but can I jump back? I forgot to answer a part of the other question, and it's about me. So I feel like it's important to say. So the difference between an entertainment attorney and what a manager and an agent does. So the manager kind of like, guides your career, hopefully from the beginning, helps you with branding, is there, along the way, will help you with business decisions and creative decisions and your look and the direction of your career and all of that. The agent's role is specifically to book jobs for you. And the agents are, sometimes they're attorneys, sometimes they're, very aware of what the terms should be in contracts. And a lot of people choose not to have an entertainment attorney. And I understand that up to a certain point. But again, when there is enough money on the table, which for you might be 10,000 or it might be something more than that, an attorney will do things that an agent will not take the time to do in most instances, because we're the ones that after the agent has negotiated the major terms, then it'll come to someone like me. And I'm in there looking at every word that's in there and all of the things that's not just about the money, not just about your credit, but all the little things that could go wrong along the way. Our job is to predict and make sure you're protected in all the things that can happen in every scenario that can come up. Like, for example, this year, we had issues with the pandemic. And so everyone was looking into their contracts about what happens in a situation like this. Do I still get paid? Do I have to go back to work? And all of those things would be in the contract and something under the law that an agent probably was not looking closely at. So we know one word can make a difference. We know by looking back on these contracts and having to refer to them what matters. So that's the role of an entertainment attorney that you're not going to get, anywhere else. So we're important in that sense, but also, we're not out there getting you the job. So the agent is important and we're not guiding your career along the way. So each of us plays different roles. And then
thank you for coming back to that. I'm sorry.
I felt like, I forgot about it for a second too. I was like, wait, I didn't talk about what I do, which I think is pretty important.
No, but that's the most important. And so to I look at it as like you're future proofing their careers. And that's so important. And it can wind back to the other question I had about releases and how you're signing your papers early on, even before you're doing union work or anything. Can you speak to all that?
Absolutely. Of course, we have to talk about a reality. Earlier in your career, you don't have a lot of leverage. You're taking what you can get, you're signing whatever they tell you to sign. And, that's just the nature of what it is. Sometimes you're not being paid and you're giving up, your rights to your image and likeness. So one of the things to always look out for is how long and in what way they can use your image and likeness. You want to limit that to the project that you're working on. So you don't want that to extend to any and all uses. That's key, right? Because if they own the rights to your name, image, and likeness, they can slap you on a bottle of water and sell water. So you have to make sure that there's no merchandise rights. You have to make sure, like merchandise, product, things like that, because that's an endorsement that you should be entitled to be paid for. And a lot of times these contracts they're blanket releases, and they will say, we can use it however we want to use it. And again, we're talking about early stages contracts that aren't necessarily negotiated. And so, the amount of time is important, whether they can use it for spin-offs, sequels, prequels. I mean, these are all things that you ideally want to be paid for. And we're talking about non-union. So everything is up for negotiation. So those are some things that you want to look out for. And the other thing I would say that's really important, that I really am surprised that most people don't know this, but when you hire a photographer for headshots or for, lifestyle photos for your Instagram or whatever it might be, copyright law says that the photographer owns those photos. That's really important, right? You don't own the copyright to the photos that someone just took of you, even if you paid them, even though you hired them, even though it's your image. So you actually don't even have the right to use them, really.
Wow.
Right? So it's kind of understood in the industry that you can use them, but they're really, at any moment in time, that photographer can tell you, pull that down, which is not a position you want to be in, and certainly not a position you want to be in if you've paid for the photos. So you need what's called a work for hire agreement. It's something that you can, get from a friend who's a lawyer, or you can, have someone draw it up. It's very simple. Like if I were to do that, it wouldn't take me more than an hour, and you can use that every single time you do a shoot. And basically a work for hire means that even though you're taking these photos, the moment that you create them, they're mine. The copyright belongs to me.
Oh, wow.
And so the photographer can never use them. And you have the rights to use them, and you have the exclusive right to use them. And you have the right to do all the things that a copyright owner can do, like create derivative works and turn that into something else and turn it into an illustration, and all the things that you would not be able to do if you didn't own the copyright to those photos. So that's super key. You guys know, we all hear the stories about somebody whose photos ended up somewhere and they didn't know that someone out, and what I do, because I have photos taken of me, what I do is I actually make sure in my contract that everything comes, all of the actual footage or all of the actual photos, I'm the only one that gets to keep them. So I'll allow a few for portfolio use, and all that is in the contract. So I'll allow a few for portfolio use. I'll limit it in the contract to portfolio use so that they can never sell it. And then I don't allow them to physically have them. So
you'll make them destroy their digital files?
Yeah.
That's great. That's great.
And, and that's a personal decision if you want to do that. There are photos. I mean, when you do a photo shoot, there's like whatever, 90%. I mean, I'll say for me, there's 90% that I don't want out there, and then you have then you got some that you're like, yeah, share that, because it looks great. And so that's, that becomes your discretion at that point. But I would definitely always limit it to portfolio use, and you got to put that in the contract. So you don't want them selling your images.
That's a great point. Because I remember back in the day, when I was acting, like we would have to take our headshots to get physical reproductions, and you'd have your stack of headshots, but you had to take that form showing that you own the rights to that before they could, the printer could make copies, and I think now, since everything's digital, people aren't getting that.
Yeah. And I'll also say this, be very careful if the photographer gives you the contract, because that's going to be very different from a contract that you give your photographer.
Great
And the
point.
last thing I'll say about that is there are instances where you are being hired for something and you're not going to own the copyright to that. So if you're hired by a brand, if you're hired by, a production company, any of those instances, they're going to own that copyright. So just be aware of that. You're being paid for that though, as
Right.
opposed to you paying someone to take photos of you.
And you can't take that from their advertising and put it on your social unless that's agreed upon.
Unless that's agreed upon, and usually that's not until a certain point.
Right.
And it, definitely can't be for sale or any of that. So that's going to come down to the contract and the kind of job it is. Sometimes they will allow portfolio use and things like that for the model or the actress, but
it's so muddy now because it's so easy to extract images. So it becomes, very crazy. Last but maybe not least for us, what would you recommend to casting directors, to look for legally, or, I mean, you've heard me many times talk about how, I feel like I'm a lawyer because we're doing all the legal papers and they expect us to. And
I'm also always telling clients, no, we are not going to ask for in perpetuity. Like that is like, I feel like I'm always beating that drum. That, it's hard to make them understand because of that very reason, Rose, that they know that someone else, it might end up on YouTube or Instagram or something, and they don't have control of the image that they paid for at that point. So, I always say, like 2 years plus organic usage kind of thing. And that, if it gets out of their control, they can't be sued for something they can't control.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I'll tell you why producers do that. So we're, I don't know if we're talking about modeling or if we're talking about acting, but if we're talking about acting, the reason producers do that is because it's a pain in the butt to have to come back and get the rights again. If you're doing anything, which, projects transform and so you really want the broadest rights that you can get so that you don't have to go to the bother once you have all of these contracts in place with everyone else. You're director, now you got distribution deals and all of that. And so the distributors also want to see that the rights are free and clear. They don't want to have to come back for anything.
Right.
And so that's why you see in perpetuity, that's why you see broad uses. That's why you don't own the copyright as an actor, just none of that. It's like, we're paying you, you're going to get the money that you're going to get your residuals. And that's where it lands. That doesn't mean there are things you can't negotiate, but that's something, perpetuity is not always something that you can get out.
Right.
Sometimes it's going to be in your contract, and that's okay in some instances. There are instances where that's perfectly fine. And there are instances where you want to limit that. And perpetuity, you can limit it to this kind of use in perpetuity. I mentioned merchandising as one of them to exclude. So you can use my images in this film, in perpetuity. You're paying me for that. You're going to own the movie and you have the rights to do what you want with that movie. But you can't put my face on, a t-shirt without paying me.
Right.
So that's something to look out for, those kinds of things. But in general, I would say the word perpetuity is scary, but it's not always a red flag. It's something to look deeper into, but really look at what it is you're giving in perpetuity.
Right. I mean, I do that in commercials, like they'll want perp, but maybe just perp for web use because that's the hardest thing for them to trail. And it is what it is.
Yeah. And commercials, I'll say those, commercials are a little bit different, but the commercials, again, you're getting residuals per use. So it's going to end up being okay. But there are instances like, let's say you're doing an endorsement deal where those endorsements end up is important. So I did a deal recently where it was a social branding deal. And there was also a video that was being made that was kind of made for social. And the brand, without telling my client, was put in the agreement that they can use it on their website in perpetuity. And that's an actual endorsement, right? So that's endorsing your product. That's not a social post where you're endorsing and then it's gone in 30 days or 60 or whatever the campaign period is for that product. It's something that they want to live on their website forever. Now, what happens when my client, 6 months from now or a year from now or 2 years from now wants to do a branding or endorsement deal with a competing product? that
Exactly.
competing product is going to want exclusivity. And so they're not going to work with him
Right.
Mm.
if that's the case. Because those deals all have exclusivity during at least that term of the campaign. So now there's this other thing floating out there where my client's endorsing this product that you might not even want to endorse in a couple years. Like, what if it turns out that like the product is, you know, is a lemon or whatever, there's problems with it, it's causing cancer, like whatever it might be, and you want to get out of that. I mean, we all know like that happens. And and another thing that I will say is important, some people run away from kind of morals clauses because, and that's kind of a whole nother conversation with all the Me Too things that are happening and the scandals and things like that. But for actors, I always put in their contracts, and again, these are actors who have some leverage, but you can always ask and let people say no. But I always put in contracts that if at any point something happens that is either illegal or, you know, would basically be inconsistent. Sometimes I've gotten very aggressive and asked for language that says inconsistent with my client's brand, because my client has a very specific brand. But we want options to pull out of a deal and get images down if anything happens that's going to hurt my client. And so you want to try to get that in there if you can. And again, that's us seeing all the things that could go wrong down the line and saying,
Right.
oh, that happens. Like, hey, we saw this stuff happen with, you know, Me Too and people being accused of things like that. And you don't want to be affiliated, you know, with people who are doing bad things. And so that's something to look out for.
Right, right. Well, this has been so interesting, Mitra. I cannot thank you enough for so many golden nuggets for our viewers. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yes.
It's always my pleasure. I'm always happy to share and help the creative community. I got a soft spot for all the actors out there. And so I love what you guys do and what you're about. So always happy to.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you,
hope you'll
Mitra.
come back again and answer some more deep questions for the actors.
Yeah.
we're gonna be asked a million of them once this airs, right?
Oh my God.
Well, yeah, you're going to get a lot more because there's so much to cover. But you guys also know I'm doing legal tip videos, entertainment law tip videos
Yes.
on my Instagram. So there's that. Those are extra resources for anyone who wants to learn more. And I
Perfect.
answer questions that come up a lot over and over again, and I put them in a short video. And sometimes I answer things you didn't know you had a question about. So
And we'll be providing links for everyone too. So
Yes, yes. Thank you. Send me your links, and yeah, we'll have all the links in bio. Mitra, thank you for joining us.
my pleasure.
Make sure you all subscribe to Mitra's Instagram and subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you guys next
bye,
time.
everybody.